Chosen one. Listen closely. Time is no longer waiting for your hesitation. The heavens have begun to move, and the sound you hear in your spirit is the rhythm of divine timing. November 26th is not an ordinary date on the calendar. It is an appointment written in the scrolls of eternity. The clock of heaven is striking, and the sound of its chime bears your name. You have felt the shift already. Those quiet moments when your heart grows restless. Those sudden waves of conviction that silence every distraction. Those are not random. They are signals from above, calling you into alignment. You are not like the rest. You are chosen, marked for something greater. Every delay, every rejection, every closed door has been heaven's careful construction. What felt like resistance was really refinement. What felt like silence was strategy. The Father has been setting your stage, aligning your path with divine order. But hear this warning: when heaven announces movement, delay becomes disobedience. The enemy has studied your timing, and his weapon is subtle distraction. He will whisper, "There's still time," but there isn't. November 26th is the crossing point. To miss it is to wander outside the rhythm of grace. Chosen one. The spiritual world is shifting. What was blocked before is about to open. But your readiness determines what is released. There are instructions waiting in prayer. There are assignments that only your obedience can unlock. Heaven is preparing to pour, but the vessel must be ready. This is not a call to panic. It is a call to position. The season you are entering requires precision. Every hesitation from this point forward costs something in the spirit. Every maybe later becomes a thief of destiny. You cannot afford another cycle of almost. You are being summoned to walk in complete faith, because the timing of heaven is never delayed. It is divine. Now, feel this truth settle deep within you. Heaven has already written your name beside this moment. Angels are standing by, ready to deliver what was delayed. But obedience is the key. One act of faith can unlock what years of effort could not. This is the hour of alignment. Do not mistake comfort for peace. Sometimes divine peace comes wrapped in discomfort because growth demands stretching. You will feel the pull between fear and faith. But remember, fear only exists where trust has not yet taken root. Plant your trust now, and the soil of obedience will bear fruit. Every chosen one walks through a season where the unseen becomes louder than the seen. In that place, faith is tested and purified like gold. Heaven is watching, not just your words, but your consistency. Stand firm, even when you feel forgotten. Your steadfastness is the signal that opens heaven's gates. We are reminded through the writings of David in the Psalms. Chapter 32, verse 8. I will instruct you, teach you the way, counsel you with my loving eye upon you. Hear this truth. God is not silent. He is specific. He has already mapped your next step, already ordered your direction, already prepared the counsel you will need. The question is not whether he will guide you, it is whether you will listen when he speaks. Beloved, every time you felt overlooked, heaven was watching. Every time you cried, Lord, why not yet? He whispered, I'm preparing the hour. And now, the hour has come. November 26th is not a superstition, it is synchronization. What you do with that day will shape what heaven releases after it. Breeze up. Chosen one. Shake off the fatigue of waiting. Your assignment is waking. Your promise is stirring. You have survived the fire. And now, the crown is near. But the crown belongs only to those who obey the call when it comes. This message has found you for a reason. Don't ignore the pull you feel right now. Heaven has pressed pause on the noise around you to speak directly to your soul. If your spirit bears witness to this word, declare your agreement. Type 777 in the comments as a sign of alignment. Like this message. Share it with another chosen one who must not miss their hour. And subscribe so you don't miss what heaven releases next. This is divine timing, not human coincidence. The clock of destiny is striking. Be found ready when heaven calls your name. The whisper before the storm. This is where you find yourself now. Chosen one. The air feels heavy, charged with invisible meaning. The days leading to November 26th have grown quieter around you, but not in the way silence comforts. This quiet carries weight. It feels as though heaven has drawn a deep breath before speaking your name aloud. You sense it even when you cannot explain it. The sudden stillness, the flicker of awareness, the unusual way the world seems to pause for you. These are not coincidences. They are divine whispers preparing you for what is about to break forth. You have asked, why does everything feel unsettled? It is because God often rearranges the atmosphere before revealing his next instruction. He removes noise, closes certain doors, and draws your attention inward so that his whisper can reach you. When heaven speaks softly, it is because it wants your undivided heart. And right now, that whisper is calling you closer. You are standing on the edge of revelation. You have noticed the patterns, people shifting away, relationships fading, opportunities slowing. It is not rejection, it is refinement. God is trimming the branches that cannot handle your next level. The quieter your surroundings become, the more clearly you will hear his direction. Every chosen one must pass through this hush before the storm of blessing is released. It is during this stillness that the enemy becomes loudest. He tries to convince you that nothing is happening, that the silence is abandonment, but the truth is the opposite. Silence means strategy. Heaven is working in the unseen, constructing the path that will carry your promise. You must resist the urge to fill the silence with fear. Learn instead to rest inside it. There is a divine art in listening. When you tune your spirit to heaven's frequency, the whispers of God become your compass. This is not about chasing signs. It is about cultivating sensitivity. You must learn to recognize the voice that has always been guiding you. It has spoken through dreams, through chance encounters, through words you almost ignored, and it will speak again. The Spirit spoke through the prophet Jeremiah. Chapter 33, verse 3. Call to me. I will answer and show you great, unsearchable things you do not know. This is what the whisper before the storm truly means. It is an invitation to call. Heaven is not silent because it has nothing to say. It is silent because it is waiting for you to ask. The Creator of all things leans down, listening for the sound of your voice. When you speak in faith, the veil between seen and unseen begins to thin, and divine revelation flows freely. So listen carefully. Chosen one, in these days, you may feel the tension between anticipation and uncertainty. But heaven's whisper is not meant to confuse you. It is meant to prepare you. Before a storm of breakthrough comes, God often lowers his tone so that only those who are truly aligned can hear. Others will miss it. But you, if you remain still, will catch every word. Do not mistake silence for absence. The whisper of God carries more authority than the shout of man. It is in quiet surrender that instructions are released. You do not need to chase confirmation from others. You already carry heaven's frequency within you. Each time you still your heart, you create space for divine wisdom to settle. There is power in the pause before the promise, the calm before the change, the whisper before the storm. This pause is not punishment, it is preparation. God is adjusting your hearing, sharpening your discernment, tuning your spiritual senses to recognize his move when it comes suddenly, when the storm finally arrives. Those who have not listened will panic, but you will know exactly what to do, because you heard the whisper first. You must understand, revelation is never random. Heaven releases it to those who have proven that they will guard it. That is why your journey has required so much isolation. You could not hear clearly while surrounded by noise. The wilderness you walked through was not meant to destroy you, but to train your ears. So in this sacred silence, do not rush. Let your heart grow still enough to catch the faintest hint of divine direction. You are learning the language of heaven, the pauses, the impressions, the sudden peace that interrupts fear. When you sense that still peace fall upon you, know that heaven has just spoken. The storm that approaches is not one of destruction, but of movement. It will rearrange everything that has stood stagnant. But only those who heard the whisper will recognize the pattern within the chaos. Only those who listened will see the order in the shaking. Beloved, take courage in this quiet hour. The hush you feel is not the end. It is the inhale before God exhales purpose. The world may be loud, but heaven communicates in calm. If you can master stillness now, you will stand firm when winds begin to roar. The weight of delay, this is the stage where many chosen ones stumble. You have heard the whisper. You have felt the call. But obedience still costs you something. Every divine instruction demands surrender, and sometimes that surrender feels heavier than your strength. You tell yourself you are only waiting for the right time. But deep down, you know delay has already begun to rob you. Each postponed step carries spiritual weight. Every time you say, "I'll do it later," something in the spirit realm pauses with you. Heaven can schedule your blessing, but it will not override your hesitation. Destiny does not move until obedience does. You have prayed for doors to open, but perhaps the door is already open, and it is you who has refused to walk through. This is not condemnation. Beloved, it is awakening. The Father's voice is not scolding, it is pleading. Heaven has seen how close you are to the turning point. Your warfare has intensified, not because you are failing, but because you are near. Darkness always grows louder right before obedience breaks through. The enemy cannot destroy the promise, so he delays the carrier. He convinces you that waiting is wisdom, when in truth, waiting is disobedience in disguise. Listen carefully. Procrastination is not neutral, it is rebellion disguised as reflection. You have already received confirmation after confirmation. The message that keeps returning. The same conviction that stirs your spirit. The repeated sign. It is not coincidence, it is divine insistence. The longer you delay, the heavier your spirit becomes. You have asked, "Why do I feel spiritually tired?" It is because unfulfilled obedience drains the soul. Heaven keeps pouring revelation into you, but without release, revelation becomes pressure. The only way to lighten the weight is to move. Act upon what God has already told you. Obedience restores strength faster than rest ever could. Heaven speaks clearly through the words in Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 2. All these blessings will come on you and accompany you if you obey the Lord your God. You may think you are waiting on God, but perhaps God is waiting on you. He has already arranged your promotion, your healing, your breakthrough. It sits in the spiritual realm, marked with your name. But until obedience authorizes release, it remains locked. The enemy cannot steal what you have not yet accessed, but he can keep you distracted long enough that the appointed time expires. Beloved, chosen one, it is time to act. The season of spiritual indecision is over. Heaven is not asking for perfection, it is asking for movement. Even a trembling step forward is better than standing still. God honors motion, not comfort. Delay also breeds distortion. The longer you hesitate, the more the enemy fills your imagination with fear. He magnifies the cost of obedience and hides its reward. You begin to see obedience as loss instead of liberation. But what if you knew that your next act of faith would unlock everything you've been praying for? Would you still wait? Your obedience carries generational impact. Somewhere, someone's destiny depends on your decision to move. Every divine instruction is connected to more than just your life. You are the thread that completes a larger tapestry of purpose. When you delay, other assignments stay paused too. The kingdom waits for the obedience of one to ignite the faith of many. So rise up, chosen one. The weight you feel today is not meant to crush you, it is meant to push you forward. The longer you resist, the heavier it becomes. But the moment you move, that weight turns into wind beneath your feet. The very thing that burdened you will begin to lift you. Take courage. Heaven has not withdrawn its promise because of your hesitation. Mercy is still extending its hand. You can still choose obedience today. The moment you do, the delay ends. Now, before this section closes, let your declaration be simple but sincere. Write these words below. I will move. Type them as a prophetic act. It is not just a comment, it is a covenant. By declaring it, you are breaking the spirit of delay and aligning with the rhythm of obedience. Every time you read those 3 words, your soul will remember this moment. You will feel resistance even as you type it, because the enemy fears those who decide. But your obedience today becomes the seed of tomorrow's breakthrough. You are not behind schedule. You are stepping back into alignment. Heaven is watching, waiting for your response. Move with boldness. Walk with fire. Let delay lose its grip. And let obedience carry you into the fullness of what God has promised. The weight of delay is ending here, right now, as you declare, I will move. Your hidden opposition. This is where the battle deepens. Chosen one, you have felt the weight of delay. You have learned to listen for the whisper. And now, as you prepare to move, resistance rises. It does not come from obvious enemies. It hides behind familiar faces, daily patterns, even within your own thoughts. The darkness around you knows what you are about to become, and it fears your awakening. That is why the opposition feels personal. It is not random. It is strategic. Every chosen one walks through a season where unseen resistance tries to suffocate progress. You feel it as exhaustion that makes no sense, sudden discouragement after spiritual clarity, or confusion that clouds your confidence. It is the invisible battle between destiny and distraction. When you cannot explain the weight pressing against your obedience, it is often because you have entered enemy territory, the ground where purpose is born. The closer you move to your promise, the louder the opposition grows. Demonic forces are not threatened by casual believers, they are terrified of obedient ones. The moment you start aligning with heaven's instructions, hell takes notice. It cannot stop God's plan, but it will attempt to wear you down until you quit. That is why weariness attacks just before breakthrough. Do not be deceived by how subtle these attacks feel. The enemy rarely appears with horns. He shows up through fatigue, fear, or familiar temptation. He hides behind busyness, disguises himself as logic, and whispers, "You're doing too much." Yet those who carry divine assignments will always seem too much to those who live without spiritual awareness. The Apostle reminds us in his letter to the Ephesians, chapter 6, verse 12, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." End quote. This is why fighting people never works. They are not your real enemy. The conflict in your home, the jealousy from friends, the rejection at work, all of it is merely the shadow of a deeper spiritual reality. The darkness that cannot touch your calling directly will use whatever vessel is available to discourage you. That is why you must guard your peace as fiercely as a soldier guards his sword. The more you focus on God, the smaller the opposition becomes. Darkness cannot dwell where light is steady. You do not overcome by shouting louder than the storm, but by standing unshaken in faith. Your calm confuses the enemy more than your anger ever could. When you recognize that opposition is part of divine strategy, fear loses its grip. The same storm that was designed to destroy you becomes the wind that carries you closer to purpose. Every fiery dart aimed at your spirit becomes fuel for your growth. Heaven wastes nothing, not even warfare. So when pressure rises, pause and remember who you are. You are not fragile. You are fortified. You have survived battles that would have ended others. You have carried burdens heavier than your own strength. Yet you are still standing. That is not coincidence. It is evidence of divine reinforcement. You are surrounded by unseen allies. Angels walk with you into every confrontation, not as passive observers, but as warriors. Your prayers activate their movement. Your worship strengthens their ranks. When you resist fear, you multiply light. The atmosphere shifts when you remember that the battle is not yours, it is the Lord's. Hidden opposition cannot win against revealed identity. The moment you truly understand that you are chosen, the enemy loses access to your emotions. He may still roar, but his roar no longer dictates your direction. So let this be your posture, quiet confidence. Move through the day knowing you are guarded. When accusation comes, answer it with peace. When fear rises, breathe out truth. The more you respond with faith, the more heaven expands its defense around you. This is not just about surviving opposition, it is about mastering it. You were never meant to live in constant fear of attack. You were meant to walk as one who carries authority. The presence of opposition is not evidence that you are weak. It is confirmation that you are advancing. Do not pray for the battle to disappear. Pray for discernment to recognize its purpose. Every pushback reveals how close you are to stepping into your next level. The enemy does not waste energy on the irrelevant. The fact that you are targeted means you are trusted with territory. So lift your head. Chosen one. You are not under attack, you are under assignment. The resistance surrounding you is the final test before the release. Stand firm. Hold faith. And remember, hidden opposition always precedes visible elevation. The seal of the chosen. This is where heaven's mark becomes visible. You have walked through delay, endured silence, faced hidden opposition, and yet you remain. That endurance itself is evidence that you are not ordinary. You are sealed, set apart by divine design. While others drift with circumstance, you are anchored by calling. Think of gold before it shines. It does not begin beautiful, it begins buried. The fire that surrounds it is not punishment, it is purification. That is what God has been doing with you. The losses, the misunderstandings, the moments where you wondered if He forgot your name, those were the flames shaping your worth. And now, as the impurities burn away, heaven's mark begins to glimmer from within you. Every chosen one carries a seal. It cannot be seen by the eyes of the crowd, but heaven recognizes it instantly. It is not placed upon you because of perfection, but because of purpose. The seal is not decoration, it is identification. It tells darkness, this one belongs to God. There is a reason certain doors closed for you that opened for others. You are not rejected. You are protected. The seal upon your life is heaven's boundary line. It keeps you from settling for what others call success, because your measure of success is not comfort, it is completion. According to what is revealed in the book of 2 Corinthians, chapter 1, verse 22, He set His seal of ownership on us and put His Spirit in our hearts as a deposit, guaranteeing what is to come. That deposit, beloved, is not an idea, it is the very Spirit of God living within you. The seal is not stamped on your skin, but engraved upon your soul. That's why, even when you tried to walk away, something holy kept pulling you back. You could not blend in with the world, because heaven has already branded you as its own. And yet, being sealed comes with responsibility. Those who carry the mark of purpose must live differently. You cannot hide in compromise when your spirit burns with calling. Every word you speak carries weight. Every act of kindness echoes beyond the moment. You are an ambassador of eternity, walking through a temporary world when you feel unseen. Remember that gold is hidden before it is displayed. Diamonds are formed in silence before they are set upon crowns. Trees take root underground before they ever touch the light. You, too, are growing in unseen places. Do not despise that hiddenness. It is the soil where your strength matures. There is beauty in knowing that heaven's approval does not depend on earthly applause. You do not need the validation of those who cannot perceive your anointing. The same crowd that doubted David never saw the oil Samuel poured on his head. Likewise, your seal is not for them to understand. It is for heaven to recognize when your name is called. Beloved, this is why you must guard your light carefully. Do not let bitterness dim it or exhaustion silence it. The seal does not remove hardship, but it ensures victory. You may bend under pressure, but you will not break. For divine ownership means divine protection. And now, as this message reaches your heart, let me speak gently to the part of you that is tired, the part that wonders if what you're carrying even matters. It does. Every word you've spoken in faith, every small act of obedience when no one was watching, they have all been recorded in heaven's account. Your endurance has value. If this message finds you, if it stirs something deep within, then let your response be as sincere as your journey. Let this be more than a moment. Let it be a movement. Support this flow of light so that it can keep reaching others like you. When you like, when you share, when you subscribe, you are not feeding an algorithm, you are feeding a flame. You are helping this voice reach another weary soul who needs to remember that they, too, are sealed. And if your heart feels moved to go beyond that, to sow into the very message that has spoken life into you, then give not out of pressure, but out of purpose. Think of it as pouring oil back into the lamp that has illuminated your path. Your seed becomes a spark that keeps the light burning for someone still lost in darkness. Every act of support, no matter how small, is an offering of gratitude. It says, God, I recognize your work here, and I choose to keep it alive. That is how chosen ones give quietly, sincerely, with a heart full of reverence. So, as you continue on this path, remember your seal. Let the world see it not through symbols, but through the way you live, love, and shine. The seal upon you is heaven's signature, unmistakable, inerasable, eternal. November 26th. The alignment. This is the moment where time and eternity meet. Chosen one. Heaven is not random. It moves in rhythm. Every prophecy, every delay, every battle you've endured was a piece of a divine calendar counting down to this alignment. What is coming is not another ordinary day. It is convergence. You have felt it building for weeks now. That strange tension between weariness and expectation. One part of you is tired of believing, yet another part refuses to let go. That is how you know heaven is near. When faith feels fragile but still refuses to die, it means destiny is close enough to touch. November 26th carries a vibration in the spirit. It is the moment heaven and earth agree on your behalf. The trials you've endured were not random obstacles. They were coordinates aligning you to the right place, with the right people, at the right time. You have not been moving in circles. You have been orbiting a promise. And now, the orbit is closing. This alignment is not about luck. It is about positioning. When heaven releases blessing, it looks for order. You cannot receive divine outpouring while standing outside obedience. The power of this date is not in the number itself, but in the obedience that meets it. Those who prepare will receive. Those who ignore will watch it pass. The ancient words recorded in Romans, chapter 8, verse 28 remind us, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." Hence, this alignment is not punishment, it is partnership. God is not trying to take from you, he is trying to position you. The pain you felt was not rejection, it was redirection. Every time something fell apart, heaven was recalibrating your path. You have been in divine orbit, pulled by gravity stronger than your understanding. When the sun and moon align, tides shift. When heaven and faith align, destinies turn. Something powerful happens when obedience meets appointed timing. What was once stuck begins to move. What was once dry begins to flow. This is what November 26th represents, a spiritual tide turning in favor of those who stayed faithful in the dark. You may not see the full picture yet, but trust the pattern. Seeds buried long ago are beginning to crack open beneath the surface. What you thought was silence was germination. You are standing in the in-between, the final stretch before manifestation. Heaven's order is never rushed, but always right on time. Think of a clock where every gear must fit perfectly. One small shift too early or too late throws everything off. God has been adjusting your gears, your mindset, your priorities, your relationships, so that when the clock strikes, your life moves in divine harmony. But this alignment requires awareness. Those who live distracted will miss it. This is a time to pause, to pray, to prepare your atmosphere. Fast from noise. Guard your conversations. Protect your peace. The same way sailors watch the wind before setting sail, watch the stirring in your spirit before November 26th. It is a signal, not a superstition. Beloved, the alignment is not coming to make you comfortable, it is coming to make you ready. When divine order falls into place, old structures break. The familiar may tremble, but do not mistake the shaking for danger. God is clearing what cannot continue with you. You will feel sudden endings, but they are divine edits. Many will wonder why the shift feels intense. It is because alignment exposes everything that is out of place. The closer you draw to purpose, the more sharply contrasts appear: truth against falsehood, faith against fear, light against darkness. But this exposure is mercy. It gives you the clarity to choose correctly. In these days, heaven will whisper new instructions. They may not make sense at first, but obedience now carries multiplied reward. Do not seek understanding before acting, seek trust. The alignment is precise. Your yes must be too. Now, before this section closes, seal your agreement. Type 555 in the comments below. It is not a number of luck, it is a prophetic declaration of grace. Alignment and transition. As you type it, you are symbolically stepping into divine synchronization. You are telling heaven, I'm ready. Adjust me. Align me. Lo, feel this truth settle deep in your spirit. What's meant for you will not miss you, but only if you're in position when it arrives. November 26th is not a date to fear. It is a gate to prepare for. The alignment is almost complete. Heaven is counting down. The test of obedience. This is where words end and choices begin. Chosen one. Every promise carries a proving ground. Before God releases new authority, He measures the depth of your trust. This test is not to expose weakness, but to reveal readiness. You have prayed for breakthrough, for clarity, for purpose, but now heaven is watching to see if your actions align with your requests. Obedience is not glamorous. It rarely feels glorious. Often it means saying yes when every logical voice says no. It is stepping out while the ground beneath you still looks uncertain. Obedience is the language. Faith speaks when words no longer suffice. In this season, your test will not come dressed as temptation. It will come disguised as choice. Two paths may appear right, but only one carries divine instruction. The enemy is skilled at offering shortcuts that look holy but lead to delay. He knows you are close to breakthrough, so he will tempt you with imitation blessings. Not every open door is from God. Some are baited traps meant to keep you from your true assignment. How do you recognize the right path? Peace. True peace never argues with purpose. It settles quietly in the soul. Even when circumstances look chaotic. Confusion, on the other hand, is always the shadow of compromise. When your spirit feels restless, pause. The moment you obey the wrong voice, prise de part. As Jesus himself declared in the Gospel of John, chapter 14, verse 15, "If you love me, keep my commands." Oh, that is the essence of every test. Love proved through obedience. Obedience is not about control. It is about communion. God does not test you to break you, but to bind you closer. Every yes builds intimacy. Every act of trust builds strength. When Abraham lifted the knife over Isaac, it wasn't about sacrifice. It was about surrender. Heaven needed to see that Abraham valued God more than gift. And when that heart was revealed, the ram was already waiting in the thicket. In your own journey, the test may not look as dramatic, but it carries the same principle. God is asking, can I trust you with what you've been praying for? Will you follow when the path feels unfamiliar? Will you keep your faith steady when the outcome remains unseen? The next dimension of your calling will not open to emotion, it opens to obedience. Sometimes, obédience demande silence. It asks you to stay where pride wants to defend itself. It asks you to release what comfort wants to keep. It may ask you to bless what betrayed you, or to build where you were broken. That's why the test feels painful. It requires your surrender, not your strength. And yet, in every act of obedience, something supernatural happens. Heaven shifts. The unseen responds. Angels are dispatched, not to those who merely pray, but to those who obey. Each step of faith becomes a signal in the Spirit, announcing your readiness for elevation. Beloved, understand this clearly. Obedience is heavier than desire. Many desire destiny. Few are willing to carry the weight of obedience required to reach it. But when you choose obedience, you choose acceleration. It shortens the distance between promise and manifestation. It turns prayers into progress. If you find yourself in a moment where everything seems quiet again, where heaven's voice seems faint, do not panic. Silence often precedes instruction. God waits to see if you will honor the last command before releasing the next. He is not punishing you. He is perfecting you. Every act of obedience rewrites something in your story. What your ancestors forfeited through disobedience, you can redeem through surrender. When you obey, you become a repairer of spiritual breaches, a restorer of generations. You are not just passing a test, you are shifting history. And though obedience sometimes costs what feels irreplaceable, nothing truly surrendered to God is ever lost. Every seed of obedience eventually resurrects, multiplied. The relationships you release, the opportunities you refuse, the habits you crucify, they all return as harvest, purified and transformed. Remember this truth: God never tests to fail you, He tests to trust you. The test of obedience is heaven's way of handing you the keys to the next gate. When the question comes, answer it with faith. When the choice feels costly, know that reward is already waiting on the other side. So, chosen one, when you feel that divine tug in your heart, the one that says, "Do it now," Don't reason it away. That moment is holy. Heaven is measuring your response. The test of obedience is not about whether you understand, it's about whether you trust. And trust, when proven, unlocks everything. When silence becomes a weapon, this is the hardest season for many chosen ones, because it feels like heaven has stopped speaking. After walking faithfully, after obeying every instruction you understood, the quiet can feel like rejection. You pray and hear nothing. You open the word and it reads dry. You look for signs, but the heavens stay still. This is not abandonment. This is the divine art of silence. There is a reason God sometimes hides. His silence is not punishment, it is protection. If you could hear everything too early, you might move too soon. If he answered every prayer instantly, you would never learn discernment. Silence matures faith in ways comfort never could. It forces you to anchor your trust, not in the sound of his voice, but in the memory of his character. Every chosen one will face this moment, the dark night of the Spirit, where faith becomes sightless. It is here that true intimacy with God is formed. When you cannot trace his hand, you must learn to trust his heart. That trust becomes your weapon. You see, silence is not the absence of God, it is his classroom. It teaches patience, humility, and endurance. It strips away every illusion that obedience is about reward. It reveals whether you are serving for blessing or out of love. When you stay faithful in silence, you defeat the enemy's assumption that you serve only for gain. The psalmist understood this mystery when he wrote in Psalms chapter 62, verse 1, "Truly my soul finds rest in God, my salvation comes from him." Notice the language rest, not reaction. That is the goal of silence, to teach your soul to rest even when there is no visible movement. Rest does not mean inaction, it means inner stability. It means you no longer panic when heaven pauses. You trust that what is quiet above is still active beneath. God's silence is never empty. It carries instruction hidden within the stillness. Sometimes, the lesson is about timing. Sometimes, it's about trust. And sometimes, it's simply about shifting your focus from the outcome back to the presence. When God withholds speech, he invites stillness. When he withdraws manifestation, he invites intimacy. Think of a teacher during an exam. They do not speak while the test is in progress. They trust that their student has learned enough to apply what was taught. Heaven works the same way. When God grows silent, it is because the lesson has already been given. The test is not to see what you know, but to reveal what you've become. This silence is sacred. It refines motives. It teaches you to worship without reward, to pray without proof, to love without condition. And when you pass through it, your faith emerges unshakable. Those who have endured divine silence are no longer driven by emotion. They are rooted in conviction. The enemy, however, misreads silence as opportunity. He whispers lies into the quiet. God has left you. Your prayers no longer matter. You've missed your moment. But that is where the weapon turns. If you choose to respond to silence with faith instead of fear, the quiet becomes your shield. The very stillness that once frightened you now frustrates the enemy, because your stability starves his influence. Learn to answer silence with stillness. Do not rush to fill the void with noise or opinion. Let peace speak louder than anxiety. When others crumble under unanswered prayers, stand firm in calm surrender. That calmness is your declaration. I still believe. Lo, in the absence of new instruction, return to the last word God gave you. Continue in obedience to the previous command until He speaks again. Divine silence is never a signal to stop. It is an invitation to sustain. Keep doing the last right thing faithfully, and in due time, heaven will speak again. The greatest revelations are often hidden between words, in the pauses of prayer. Sometimes, God's silence is His way of letting your spirit grow quiet enough to hear the whisper beneath the noise. What feels like distance is often the thinning of distraction. Beloved, the silence you are enduring now will soon become the proof of your maturity. When God finally speaks again, and you will realize the silence was never empty. It was filled with preparation. Hold your peace. Chosen one, let the quiet cleanse you of every frantic need to control the outcome. You are being taught to trust without evidence, to walk without map, to love without assurance. That is the deepest level of faith. When the silence breaks, your name will carry new weight, because you learned how to stand when heaven said nothing. You will be trusted with words that others cannot carry. Be still. The silence is not your enemy, it is your training ground. And soon, the whisper will return stronger than ever. The counterfeit voice. This is one of the most dangerous terrains for the chosen ones, because not every voice that sounds spiritual is divine. The closer you move toward destiny, the more imitation you will encounter. The enemy is an expert impersonator. He does not always come as darkness. Sometimes he comes as light, speaking words that sound holy but lead away from truth. You have likely felt this before a sudden opportunity that looked perfect but carried unease. A relationship that appeared sent by God, yet drained your peace. A message that echoed scripture but lacked spirit. This is the realm of the counterfeit voice. Its tone flatters the ego but never feeds the soul. Discernment becomes your greatest defense in this season. The counterfeit never attacks directly. It imitates. It uses your desires as camouflage. When you long for confirmation, it gives imitation, revelation. When you crave comfort, it offers counterfeit counsel. Its goal is simple: to shift you just slightly off course. Enough that when destiny arrives, you stand out of alignment. The voice of deception doesn't begin with lies. It begins with partial truths. Remember how the serpent spoke to Eve using God's own words but twisting their intent? That same strategy operates today. The enemy rarely denies God. He distorts Him. He makes wrong feel right, and timing feel optional. That is why discernment is not about logic. It is about listening from the Spirit, not the surface. As was spoken in the sacred texts of old, in Matthew, chapter 7, verse 15, beware of false prophets who come in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. This warning remains as alive now as it was then. False voices do not always come from preachers or prophets. Sometimes they rise from within your own fear or ambition. Your inner dialogue can echo deception if not anchored in truth. That is why you must weigh every thought against peace. If a voice pressures, manipulates, or provokes anxiety, it is not God. The voice of God convicts, but it never condemns. It instructs, but it never intimidates. You must also be careful not to confuse the voice of comfort with the voice of calling. The counterfeit often tells you what you want to hear. It praises your potential, but never challenges your pride. God's true voice, however, refines through correction. He loves you enough to disrupt you. He will never flatter you into disobedience. This is why the wilderness season is so critical. When distractions fade and the noise of the world grows silent, your ear becomes trained. You begin to recognize the subtle difference between emotional impulse and divine instruction. You start to sense when a path carries life and when it carries loss. Many fall because they follow sound instead of spirit. They chase impressive voices instead of the inward whisper. But the true guidance of God is gentle, steady, unwavering. It doesn't rush, it leads. When it speaks, you will feel it in your bones, not just your mind. Beloved, do not fear deception, fear disconnection. Stay close to the presence of God, and falsehood will expose itself. The more time you spend with truth, the easier it is to spot imitation. Just as a banker recognizes counterfeit money not by studying fakes, but by handling real currency daily, you too must dwell in the presence of authenticity. Test every word, every dream, every confirmation against Scripture and the peace within. The Holy Spirit is not chaotic. He is consistent. If what you hear contradicts the word or corrupts your peace, release it. Nothing that demands you abandon integrity can ever be divine. Remember, even Jesus was tempted by Scripture, misused. The enemy quoted verses, but the intent was poison. You must discern not only what is said, but who benefits from it. The counterfeit always leads back to self-glorification. The true always leads back to surrender. So when you feel torn between two directions, step back and listen beyond sound. The real voice of God brings light even in correction. It may convict your heart, but it always leaves you hopeful, never hopeless. Now, before we close this section, anchor your faith with declaration. Write these words below. I hear truth. Simple, but powerful. As you type it, you are aligning your spiritual ear with heaven's frequency. You are declaring war against confusion and deception. Every time you say, I hear truth, you remind both heaven and hell that you belong to the shepherd who calls his sheep by name. And remember this, chosen one, the shepherd's voice will never compete for your attention. It waits to be recognized, not forced. The counterfeit shouts, the shepherd whispers. When your heart grows quiet, truth will always rise above the noise. The cry of destiny. This is the moment when purpose itself begins to call your name. It's not a sound you hear with your ears. It's something you feel deep within your ribs, a stirring that refuses to rest. It wakes you in the night. It burns in your chest when you try to go back to ordinary living. That restlessness you've been feeling, chosen one, is not frustration, it's labor. Destiny is crying out from within you, asking to be born. Every calling begins as a cry. Before Moses led nations, he was an infant crying in a basket, floating down a river of uncertainty. Before David held a crown, he sang unseen songs in the wilderness, his melodies echoing toward a throne he did not yet know existed. Before Jesus healed the blind, he wept in a garden, the weight of humanity pressing on his heart. Every great story begins with a groan. The cry you feel now is the sound of spiritual expansion. Your spirit has outgrown the shell of your old life. You can no longer fit where you used to settle. And that discomfort is not your punishment. It's your signal. Heaven is enlarging you. The apostle reminds us in Romans chapter 8, verse 19. The creation waits in eager expectation for God's children to be revealed. This means that even creation itself is waiting for you to rise, to answer the pull within you. Your obedience is not just personal, it is cosmic. Every delay echoes through generations. Every yes ripples through eternity. That's why this cry feels so urgent. It's not only your heart that longs, it's heaven itself. You are being summoned to move from survival to significance. But destiny, like birth, requires pushing. It hurts. It stretches. It tests the limits of comfort. The groan you feel in your soul is the sign that purpose is pressing against the barriers of fear and doubt. Don't resist it. Breathe through it. You are closer than you think. And in this moment, as your spirit trembles between who you've been and who you are becoming, allow yourself to receive strength. There is a reason why this message reached you. The same spirit that ignited prophets and kings now moves through your life, calling you higher. Beloved, as you walk this journey, remember that destiny is not a solo sound, it's a symphony. You are one instrument in heaven's orchestra, and when one note falters, the others wait for it to find tune again. That's why this message exists, to help you find your sound again. If what you've read has reached something deep in you, if it feels like these words are speaking the language your soul forgot it knew, then I invite you to do something simple yet sacred. Like this message, not out of habit, but out of recognition. Each like is a spark that keeps the light moving through the dark. Share it, not to gain attention, but to pass the flame somewhere out there. Another chosen one is trying to silence their own cry, thinking they are alone. Your share may be the bridge heaven uses to reach them. And if this message has blessed you, consider subscribing, not just to follow, but to stay connected to this flow of divine revelation. We are a family of listeners learning to discern heaven's frequency together. Each time you return, you're stepping back into an atmosphere where your faith is stirred, your courage refueled, and your purpose sharpened. Now, let me speak to those who feel moved, to go beyond listening to those who feel that inner nudge to give. Understand this. Supporting this message is not about transaction, it's about transformation. When you donate, you are not funding words, you are fueling waves of hope. You are sowing into the soil that feeds others. Every seed keeps the voice of purpose alive for someone still trapped in silence. Think of it like this: a candle loses nothing when it lights another. Your giving is that flame. It multiplies light without diminishing your own. Heaven always remembers those who pour oil into lamps meant to guide others home. So, as destiny cries within you, let your actions echo back in faith. Support where you are fed. Share what has stirred you. Sow where your spirit feels life. Because when you invest in the divine, you invest in eternity. You are not just a listener, chosen one, you are a builder. You are helping heaven construct bridges between hearts that have forgotten how to believe. The cry of destiny is rising louder now, but so is your strength. Answer it with movement, with generosity, with courage. Let every like, every share, every seed become your response to heaven's call. You were never meant to silence your cry. You were meant to amplify it until the world hears heaven through you. The battle in the invisible. This is the realm few see, but all feel. It is where your prayers travel, where your faith collides with forces both holy and hostile. Every moment you felt weary for no reason. Every time confusion tried to wrap around your peace. Every dream that carried strange resistance. Those were not coincidences. They were evidence that the unseen war had already begun. You must understand, chosen one, that the spiritual world is more real than the physical. The visible is only the surface reflection of deeper conflict. Long before battles appear in life, they are fought in the air around your words, in the atmosphere around your obedience. Heaven and hell do not wrestle over comfort, they wrestle over calling. The intensity of your warfare is always a mirror of your worth. Many have mistaken spiritual warfare for bad luck, but those who walk with discernment know better. The enemy doesn't attack what doesn't threaten him. The reason you have faced constant pressure is because you are carrying something sacred. There are promises on your life that hell cannot allow to manifest freely. You are a carrier of prophecy, and your very existence disturbs darkness. The voice of God thundered in the book of Exodus, chapter 14, verse 14. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. This is both a comfort and a command. The battle may rage, but victory does not come through panic. It comes through posture. Stillness is not passivity, it is spiritual authority. To be still in war means you trust heaven's strategy more than your own fear. It means you recognize that your silence can carry more power than your shouting when the Lord himself is moving. In the invisible realm, angels are your allies. They are not mere symbols of hope, they are heaven's soldiers, responding to faith-filled words. When you pray, you authorize movement in places your eyes cannot see. That is why prayer feels heavy. It shifts things. Every sincere petition releases orders into the spiritual atmosphere. The enemy knows this, which is why he tries to exhaust your voice before you can release your decree. Understand that spiritual warfare does not always look like chaos. Sometimes it looks like temptation to quit. Sometimes it looks like distraction at the moment of breakthrough. Sometimes it looks like unusual fatigue just when you decide to fast or worship. These are not natural, they are interruptions. Darkness prefers silent warriors, those who feel too tired to speak, too busy to pray, too wounded to believe. But you, chosen one, have been trained to recognize the pattern. You are not fighting for victory, you are fighting from victory. The cross settled the outcome long before your first battle began. But heaven still calls you to stand, because your stand testifies to unseen powers that you belong to a greater kingdom. Each act of perseverance is a sermon preached to invisible listeners. Sometimes the war intensifies right before something breaks open. Do not misread escalation as failure. Storms grow fiercest when they're about to exhaust themselves. What you are facing right now is not the end. It is the enemy's last attempt to discourage you before he loses grip completely. Spiritual battles are also battles of focus. Where your attention goes, your authority flows. The enemy wants your gaze fixed on fear, but God wants your eyes fixed on faith. Every anxious thought is an invitation to recenter your focus on divine truth. You win unseen wars, not by striving harder, but by believing deeper. Worship, though soft in sound, is violent in spirit. It tears through darkness like light breaking the horizon. When you worship in the middle of warfare, you confuse the enemy. he expects panic. But fin de près instead. That confusion disarms him, because joy is a weapon he cannot comprehend. Beloved, when you pray and see no result, do not assume nothing is happening. Battles take time in the invisible realm because each command, each angelic movement, must align perfectly with God's timing. You are part of a larger war that spans beyond your life, and your persistence strengthens heaven's campaign in your generation. Do not measure progress by what you see, measure it by what you sense. Peace is proof that heaven is advancing. Turmoil means you are still engaged, but not defeated. Keep declaring, keep standing, keep believing. Every breath you release in faith echoes like thunder through invisible corridors. The battle in the invisible may not always end with dramatic signs, but it always leaves transformation behind. When the dust settles, you will notice it, the stillness that follows victory, the clarity that follows confusion, the strength that comes after surrender. That is how you know heaven has won again. Stand firm, warrior of light. Though unseen, you are surrounded. Though weary, you are winning. And when the story of this battle is told in eternity, heaven will record that you did not retreat. You stood, and that was enough. The midnight instruction. This is the hour when heaven whispers what daylight cannot reveal. It is the secret conversation between Creator and called, taking place while the world sleeps. Midnight has always been sacred in Scripture. It is the hour of crossing, the moment between what was and what is becoming. In this dark silence, divine orders are often delivered. You, chosen one, have been feeling a pull lately, a stirring that wakes you when the night is deep. You may not understand why your spirit refuses rest, but heaven does. Midnight is the time when distractions fall silent and only the surrendered can hear. It is not insomnia, it is invitation. In the stillness of night, God gives instruction that carries destiny's weight. It is not shouted, it is whispered, requiring your full attention. You may hear it as an impression, a name, a sudden idea, or a quiet conviction to act differently. Heaven rarely repeats what it first whispered in the dark. If you ignore it, you may wake to find the moment past. As the prophet wrote in the scroll of Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 1, I will stand at my watch and station myself on the ramparts. I will look to see what he will say to me. The prophet did not wait idly, he positioned himself. That is what the midnight hour requires. Spiritual posture. You must stand alert in prayer, expecting heaven to speak. This is not about length, it's about alignment. 5 minutes of surrendered listening can shift more than 5 hours of restless anxiety. Heaven chooses midnight because that is when the earth is still. When the noise of ambition, complaint, and distraction fades, the soul becomes a receiver again. This is when you hear divine details, the where, the when, the how. These instructions are keys, and each one unlocks the next chapter of your calling. Sometimes, the midnight instruction will not make sense. It may tell you to forgive someone long gone, to give something that feels costly, to take a step that seems small. But remember, obedience at midnight births miracles at dawn. Every act of faith in the dark writes light into your future. Do not wait for comfort before you move. The voice of God often comes quietly but cuts deeply. It pierces hesitation and rearranges direction. You might not receive full explanation, but you will always receive peace. Peace is heaven's signature of authenticity. When you follow the midnight instruction, the supernatural begins to synchronize around you. Angels adjust circumstances while you sleep. Resources align. Hearts soften. Paths open. The instruction may seem simple, but its ripple is eternal. This is also the hour when the enemy prowls loudest, whispering confusion to drown divine clarity. He wants you distracted so that you sleep through revelation. That is why your phone buzzes, your mind races, your past resurfaces, because the enemy fears what you will hear if you stay still long enough. Silence is your weapon again. Protect it. Guard your night watch. Beloved, do not underestimate the holiness of midnight. It was at midnight that Paul and Silas sang and prison doors opened. It was at midnight that the Israelites marched out of bondage. It was at midnight that Ruth found favor and Esther found courage. Midnight is not your enemy, it is your altar. If heaven has been waking you, it is because something is about to shift. The next instruction you receive may not only change your life, but generations after you. Do not dismiss the restlessness, kneel into it. What you hear in the dark will carry you through the storm of dawn. Before you close this message, I want you to respond with faith. Write this prophetic number below, 444. It symbolizes revelation, divine guidance, and spiritual awakening. As you type it, you are agreeing with heaven that you will listen, that you will not sleep through your instruction. You are saying, Lord, speak, for I am awake. Then let the world rest, but let your spirit rise. Tonight, when the darkness deepens, remember you are not restless, you are being called. Heaven has chosen you for the midnight shift. When morning comes, you will not only wake to sunlight, but to understanding. You will know why the whispers came, why the night felt heavy, why your soul could not stay silent. The instruction is coming, listen for it, and obey when it arrives. The shaking before the glory. This is the moment when everything around you starts to tremble, not because it is falling apart, but because it is falling into place. You have prayed for transformation, and now heaven has answered, but answers often come disguised as upheaval. The shaking is not chaos, it is construction. Every chosen one faces a season where the foundations of comfort begin to quake. Relationships shift. Plans unravel. Familiar things lose their power to satisfy. It feels like loss, but it is really preparation. God is rearranging the stage of your life, clearing away the clutter that could not carry the next level of your anointing. The shaking before glory is sacred, even though it feels violent. When God begins to move what you thought was stable, it's because He's building something unshakable. You prayed for elevation, and heaven responded by shaking loose everything that couldn't rise with you. We are reminded through the writings of David in the Psalms. Chapter 18, verse 7, the earth trembled and quaked, and the foundations of the mountains shook. They trembled because He was angry. Oh, when the earth trembles, it's not random, it's reaction. Heaven's presence disrupts what cannot stand before it. The shaking is proof that God has stepped into your atmosphere. What is not built on His word begins to collapse under His weight. Beloved, the shaking is not meant to scare you, it's meant to separate you. The temporary must fall so that the eternal can stand. The friendships that faded, the doors that closed, the peace that cracked, all of them were attachments to seasons that have expired. You cannot carry the weight of yesterday into the promise of tomorrow. Imagine a tree in a violent storm. Its branches whip, its leaves scatter, and for a moment it looks wounded. Yet beneath the surface, its roots grow stronger. The wind that seems to threaten its life actually deepens its foundation. That is what the shaking is doing for you. It's driving your roots deeper into faith, into identity, into God Himself. When God shakes your world, He's answering prayers you didn't know how to articulate. You asked for growth, and He's removing what stunted it. You asked for peace, and He's exposing what disturbs it. You asked for destiny, and He's breaking everything that distracts you from it. The process looks destructive, but the intention is divine. There's a rhythm to spiritual shaking. It starts subtly, unsettled feelings, unexpected delays, sudden tension, and then it crescendos into a full rearrangement. That rhythm isn't punishment, it's calibration. God is fine-tuning every area of your life to the frequency of His glory. When the shaking stops, what remains will be perfectly aligned. Even your emotions are part of the process. The confusion, the weariness, the tears, these are the body's reactions to spiritual renovation. Don't mistake pain for failure. Pain is evidence of transformation. A butterfly struggles in the cocoon, not because it's dying, but because it's being reshaped. The shaking of your life right now is the spiritual cocoon splitting open. Do not cling to what is breaking. The more you resist, the longer the shaking lasts. Surrender instead. Let the dust rise. Let what must fall. Fall. Your peace will return. Not when things calm down, but when you accept that this shaking is holy. There will be moments where you question everything, your direction, your strength, even your purpose. But hidden within those tremors is revelation. God is revealing what's real. You are learning what cannot be taken from you. Faith built in stability is fragile. Faith built in shaking is eternal. And when the shaking finally slows, you will notice something remarkable: clarity. The noise will be gone. The clutter will be cleared. The very ground that once trembled beneath you will feel steady again, but stronger, cleaner, new. That's the moment heaven calls glory. The shaking before the glory is both an ending and a beginning. It is God removing your scaffolding so you can stand on your own spiritual strength. The foundations that remain after this will never move again, no matter what comes. So, if your world feels like it's trembling right now, take heart. You are not being punished, you are being purified. The earthquake that frightened you is building the temple within you. When the shaking ceases, you will not only stand, you will shine. Glory always follows trembling. Always. The mantle transfer. This is the moment when heaven places fresh authority upon you. It is not always announced with ceremony or applause. Often, it happens quietly. After a long season of testing, surrender, and obedience. A mantle is not earned by ambition, it is received through endurance. Those who remain faithful through fire are those heaven can trust with flame. Every generation experiences moments where God searches for vessels, men and women who can carry divine weight without collapsing under it. The mantle is not decoration, it is delegation. It is heaven's way of saying, I can trust you to continue what others began. When one assignment ends, another begins, and God transfers what has not yet been completed into the hands of those still willing to believe. Think of Elijah and Elisha on that final day together. The sky burned with separation as chariots of fire appeared, and the prophet was taken. Yet before he left, he dropped something that could not dye the mantle. That cloth carried more than fabric. It carried essence, legacy, and assignment. Elisha's hands trembled as he lifted it from the ground. But heaven watched as he whispered the only question that matters: where now is the Lord, the God of Elijah? Then he struck the waters, and they parted. The same power continued through a new vessel. This is how mantles move, not through hierarchy, but through hunger. God looks for the ones who refused to quit when the teacher departed, who kept walking even when the sky turned silent. The transfer happens in hidden places, when you are not performing, not seeking recognition, but simply obeying. The Word of God declares in the second book of Kings, chapter 2, verse 9, "Let me inherit a double portion of your spirit," said Elisha. That request was not arrogance, it was readiness. To ask for more of God's Spirit is to accept more responsibility. The double portion was not for comfort, it was for continuation. Beloved, heaven is watching you in this very season. You have walked through trials that felt endless, endured losses that stripped you to the core. But these were the conditions required for a mantle transfer. God does not place new weight on untested shoulders. The shaking that nearly broke you was heaven's way of strengthening you for inheritance. Every mantle has a cost. To carry new authority, you must release old identity. You cannot hold on to yesterday's fears while reaching for tomorrow's fire. That is why this transition feels uncomfortable. It's sacred exchange. Heaven is taking from you what can't sustain the next season and giving you what can. The mantle may come in the form of new boldness, deeper wisdom, or unusual favor. Suddenly, things that once intimidated you will no longer move you. You will notice that your words begin to carry weight, that your presence changes atmospheres, that peace surrounds you even in storms. This is not pride, it is purpose. Heaven's signature rests on your spirit now. But remember, the mantle is not a trophy, it is a tool. It exists to serve, not to elevate ego. It comes with both glory and burden. When God gives you a mantle, He also gives you the hearts of people to protect, burdens of nations to pray for, and assignments that require continual humility. The mantle rests only on those who kneel. Do not rush this moment. Let it settle on you gently. You may not even realize the full extent of what has been placed in your hands until you begin to walk. The proof of a true mantle is movement. Things shift when you speak. Peace settles where you stand, and light confronts darkness wherever you go. The mantle transfer is heaven's way of ensuring that divine work never dies. What began in those before you now continues through you. You are part of a lineage of faith, carrying forward promises spoken long before you were born. The same Spirit that moved through prophets, apostles, and intercessors now breathes through your obedience. Receive it quietly, carry it reverently, guard it fiercely. The fire you hold is not your own. It belongs to the generations yet to come. The final call to rise. This is not a whisper anymore. It is a trumpet. Heaven has been patient with your process, gentle through your breaking, tender through your confusion. But now, The time for hesitation has ended. This is the moment where heaven says, "Stand up, chosen one. The earth has waited long enough. Ling, you are stepping into the final stage of preparation, where all that you have endured now turns into authority. Every wound becomes a weapon. Every scar becomes a story. Every tear becomes oil. You are not rising as the same person who once trembled in uncertainty. You are emerging as one forged in divine fire. The prophet Elijah once hid in a cave after the storm, believing his ministry had ended. Yet the voice of God came, not through wind or earthquake, but through a gentle whisper, "Go back." That is what heaven is speaking over you now. Go back, not to the past, but to purpose. Return to the assignment you thought you lost. Step forward, for your preparation has already qualified you. You are the proof that pain can become prophecy. Every moment of surrender, every quiet act of obedience, every time you stayed faithful when it would have been easier to give up, heaven recorded it. And now, heaven responds with the same words spoken to Joshua. "Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise. It is time to lead." The Apostle Paul declares in the letter to the Philippians, chapter 3, verse 13, "Forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead." This verse is the anthem of every chosen one at the edge of transformation. It reminds you that rising means releasing. You cannot soar while holding the stones of yesterday. You cannot climb while carrying the weight of what was lost. Let go. The future cannot unfold in hands that are full of regret. Now, as you hear these words, let me speak plainly and with love. What you are part of here is not just another message, it is a movement, a gathering of voices across nations, each chosen in their own way, finding courage again, and movements, like fire, stay alive only when the flame is shared. If this word has stirred something in you, if it has reminded you of your strength, your purpose, your identity, then let that gratitude take form. Like this message as a declaration that you're rising, share it. Not for visibility, but for victory. Someone out there, lost in their cave of fear, needs to hear that same whisper you just received. Your share could be their lifeline, your action, their awakening. And subscribe. Not out of routine, but out of relationship. Each new message builds upon the last, weaving revelation into rhythm, guiding you through every step of your spiritual ascent. Staying connected here keeps your flame fed and your faith sharpened. Now, if this voice, this work, this flow of words has carried you through nights when silence felt unbearable, then hear me gently. You can also become part of the oil that sustains it. Supporting this message is not about money, it's about meaning. When you donate, you're not fueling a platform, you're fueling a purpose. You're helping these words reach hearts that would otherwise fade into despair. Think of it like tending a garden of light. Each seed sown, every act of giving, every word shared becomes a lamp for someone else's midnight. What flows into your life through encouragement can flow out again through generosity. This is how the kingdom multiplies, by giving back what healed you. And yes, leave your mark here in the comments. Write something from your heart, a phrase, a prayer, a declaration. Maybe you'll write, "I'm rising." Maybe you'll write, "Still standing." Whatever you say, let it be your echo of faith into this sacred space. Others will read it, and your courage will breathe strength into their weary spirits. Because rising is not a solitary act, it's contagious. When one chosen, one stands. Others remember they can too. When your voice joins the chorus, heaven's sound on earth grows louder. So rise, beloved. Rise like dawn after endless night. Rise like rivers breaking through dry land. Rise like the phoenix that carries ash into flight. Your time is not coming, it has come. The final call has been sounded, and heaven is watching to see your response. The day of reckoning, this is the threshold moment. Chosen one. The meeting point between divine promise and human response. November 26th has arrived in the Spirit, not merely as a date, but as a doorway. Heaven has written this day into your journey as a point of decision, a moment when obedience and delay can no longer share the same space. Reckoning is not about punishment, it is about revelation. It is when heaven reveals what your choices have built. When the invisible becomes visible, you are standing in the balance between what was spoken over your life and what will manifest because of your actions. This is not a day to fear, it is a day to see clearly. Every moment of obedience has been recorded. Every silent act of surrender has been remembered. The tests, the tears, the unseen sacrifices, all of it now converges here. God is not judging to destroy, He is weighing to fulfill. The day of reckoning is heaven's audit of faith. You may not see thunder, but you will feel the weight in your spirit. Things that were tolerated before will no longer rest easily in your life. Compromise will sting. Complacency will taste bitter. That discomfort is grace. It means heaven is drawing you closer, as was declared in the book of 1 Peter, chapter 4, verse 17. For it is time for judgment to begin with the household of God. Judgment, in its purest form, is not condemnation, it is calibration. It is the moment when light exposes what shadows tried to hide. When God examines, He does so to align, not to accuse. For those who have walked in humility, this reckoning will not bring fear but release. The burdens you carried unnecessarily will fall away, and the peace that felt distant will draw near again. Beloved, the spiritual world moves with precision. Heaven is not chaotic. What looks sudden to you has been scheduled for ages. The storms that have passed through your life were not random, they were divine filters, removing what could not cross into this day with you. The reckoning separates what was sent from what was borrowed, what was divine from what was deceptive. If you have been faithful in the dark, the day will reveal the strength of your roots. The fruit that seemed delayed will begin to ripen suddenly. Because time has caught up with obedience, every word spoken in faith is now meeting its appointed moment. You will see prayers answered, not because God changed, but because alignment finally matched intention. For others, this day will expose areas that have remained untouched by surrender. But even that exposure is mercy. To see truth is to be freed from illusion. Reckoning does not end hope, it restores it. When light reveals what must change, grace follows swiftly to empower the change. God does not uncover wounds to humiliate, He uncovers to heal. The day of reckoning also means recognition. Hidden ones, those who served quietly, who prayed in shadows, who gave without credit, will begin to be seen. Heaven promotes in silence before the earth ever applauds. The humble will rise, while the proud scramble for stability. The first shall be last, and the last shall be first. Do not misunderstand this season. You are not under attack, you are under evaluation. Heaven is reviewing your faithfulness, measuring your readiness for new authority. The test was never about worth, it was about weight. Can you carry what you have been praying for without breaking beneath it? If the shaking has stripped you of pride, if silence has refined your hearing, if obedience has matured your trust, then you are ready. The day of reckoning will not crush you, it will crown you. This is the day when heaven's verdict is spoken, not in wrath, but in affirmation. Well done. You may feel exhaustion now, as though the journey has taken everything from you. But this tiredness is the final threshold before renewal. The old cycle is closing, the new one beginning. The spiritual air will feel lighter after this day. Old battles will lose their voice, and clarity will replace confusion. Do not look backward. What was has been judged. What remains stands pure. Walk forward with quiet reverence, knowing you have crossed a holy line. The day of reckoning is not the end of grace, it is the unveiling of glory. Crowned at dawn, this is where the long night ends. Every trial, every tear, every moment of silence and shaking has brought you here. The horizon glows faintly now. The darkness that once intimidated you, retreating before a light it can no longer resist. This is not ordinary morning, this is resurrection. You are standing in the light of fulfillment, crowned not for survival, but for faithfulness. When dawn comes, it doesn't ask permission from the night, it simply arrives. The shadows scatter, not because they choose to, but because they cannot stay. So it is with your life. Every lie spoken against you, every delay meant to deter you, every betrayal designed to break you, they all lose authority in the light of this new beginning. The night served its purpose. Now, it must yield. You have endured much, and the crown that rests upon you now is invisible to human eyes, but unmistakable in the spirit. It is the sign of divine endorsement, the mark of one who has been refined, not destroyed. This crown is not made of gold or jewels. It is woven from obedience, humility, endurance, and love. You have worn ashes, and now heaven exchanges them for glory. As it is written in the second letter of Timothy, chapter 4, verse 8, "Now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who have longed for his appearing." This is your dawn, chosen one. You have longed, waited, and endured, and now heaven responds with reward. The crown does not represent perfection, it represents perseverance. It is given not to the flawless, but to the faithful. The night trained you to see light differently. It taught you how to pray without proof, how to stand when strength was gone, how to believe when answers hid themselves. These are lessons that crowns are made of. Every scar became a gemstone. Every disappointment became a thread of gold. You are not the same one who began this journey. You are wiser, deeper, stronger. The dawn also reveals the landscape of transformation. You will notice that certain mountains look smaller now, not because they have moved, but because you have grown. The obstacles that once loomed large have lost their power over your perception. The view from victory always changes what seemed impossible, and yet, This crowning moment is not about pride, it is about purpose. The crown is not an ending, but a commissioning. When kings and queens in ancient days were crowned, it was not merely for recognition, it was for responsibility. Their authority began the moment their head bowed under the weight of gold. So too, with you, this is not the conclusion of your calling, it is the activation of it. Heaven crowns you to remind you that you carry representation of divine order on earth. Where you walk, peace should follow. Where you speak, clarity should awaken. You are no longer reacting to darkness, you are governing light. Your words will begin to shape the spiritual atmosphere around you. That is the privilege and the pressure of the crown. But remember this truth: glory and humility must walk hand in hand. The same God who crowns also kneels to wash feet. The greater your authority, the deeper your compassion must grow. You have been lifted not to rule over others, but to lift others with you. The crown sits rightly only upon those who remember the dust they came from and the grace that raised them. As dawn expands, there will be moments of quiet awe. You'll catch glimpses of divine order in places that once seemed chaotic. You'll realize the shaking was choreography. The silence was rehearsal. The delay was alignment. Every detail makes sense in morning light. Even pain glows differently when seen through the lens of purpose. Beloved, this crowning is not loud, it is sacred. No trumpets need to sound. No crowds need to cheer. Heaven's coronations are private between the king and his chosen. In that still exchange, something eternal settles upon your spirit. A weight of peace replaces the burden of striving. The anxiety that once ruled your nights begins to fade, and clarity takes its place. The dawn also marks inheritance. The promises that once felt distant now draw near. What was prophesied in faith begins to take form in reality. Divine timing is no longer future, it is present. You are walking in fulfillment. This is not imagination, this is manifestation. Still, remember that crowns require maintenance. They must be carried with discipline, polished by prayer, and balanced by wisdom. The moment pride touches a crown, it begins to tarnish. But the one who wears it in gratitude keeps it shining. Gratitude is the cloth that preserves your glory. Look back now, not with regret, but with reverence. Every midnight, every tear, every unanswered question led you here. None of it was wasted. The road was long, but it was holy. You walked through fire and came out gold. You endured storms and discovered wings. You waited in silence and learned heaven's language. You are not just a survivor, you are a testament. So stand still for a moment. Feel the crown rest upon you, not as burden, but as belonging. You have completed the circle, chosen, tested, refined, and crowned. The dawn does not erase the night, it redeems it. The darkness only made the light more radiant. And as the sun rises fully now, casting its first rays across the horizon of your destiny, know this: the same God who crowned you at dawn will keep you through the day. His faithfulness did not end here. It continues. Everlasting. You are crowned. Beloved, not for what you lost, but for what you became. Walk forth in quiet glory, carrying heaven's reflection in your eyes. The world will know by your peace that you have met the morning, chosen one. You have reached the end of this journey, but not the end of your becoming. What you've walked through across these 17 sections has not just been words, it has been a spiritual mirror, reflecting the strength, endurance, and divine purpose within you. You have heard heaven's whisper through warning, promise, and prophecy. Now, you stand as one awakened, steady, crowned, and ready. Before this moment fades into the scroll of your day, pause. Let your heart breathe. Let gratitude rise. If this message has stirred something in your spirit, if it felt like God Himself was speaking between the lines, then let that recognition take root through action. Like this message, not as a gesture to a creator, but as an act of agreement with your own transformation. Each click is a small amen whispered into the digital wind. Share it, so that another weary soul can find the light that found you. Someone out there is one word away from hope. Your share could be the thread heaven uses to pull them back into purpose. Leave your words in the comments, whatever your heart wants to release. A sentence, a prayer, a declaration, maybe just, I'm ready. It matters. It's how faith leaves footprints for others to follow. And subscribe. Stay connected to this stream of revelation. Each message continues the story, deepens the journey, strengthens the remnant of those who will not bow to despair. Together, we are not an audience, we are a movement of light. The world grows darker, but so does the flame within the chosen ones burn brighter. You are proof that God still speaks, still calls, still crowns. The dawn has come. Rise, shine, and carry it forward.